Hello everyone. So what's going on? Oh yeah, the Australian budget. Oh my god, the Australian fucking budget. It's becoming a main issue with protests happening in universities and all this. It's fucking crazy. Now I did see a report that people were throwing insults at Abbott's family. I think that's going a little bit too far. I don't think you should take someone's personal life into it. A bad decision is based on the person who made that bad decision, Tony Abbott, the individual, not his family, to be quite honest. But to go further along, but to get into the meat of what I want to discuss here, I've looked at this budget briefly, gone over it, and seen the ideas and concepts and policies that I want to go through. And I've just thought about our government in the next over the past 2 to 3 years, and seeing what's been coming on. I mean, Labor introduced when they were in power, or they were in government, whatever. They introduced an idea of a income management scheme card, which basically you'd get this card, and for your getting governmental payments like pensions and whatnot, you're on the dole basically. You would have these cards, and you could only spend these cards in certain locations. Now, I think it was an optional thing that you had to ask for specifically, but the whole concept of the card was you can only spend it in key locations. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe I see it from a different way, but isn't that essentially a food stamp? And with the recent fear of... Now, this is not so much on this whole United States of Australia type concept. Like, it just seems to me that our government, be it Liberal or Labor, wants to follow the US in policy making and just the political ideologies that the US does. Now, some may think this is a good idea. I don't think it is. One, we're our own country. And two, have you looked at the economic downfall that's happening in the US and the major problems they're having on an economic scale? It would be a terrible idea to copy the US when it comes to their policy making. It's absolutely terrible. I mean, right now, there's bills in certain states to get money out of politics because there's so much corruption. So following the US when it comes to politics ain't a good idea. I mean, recently there's been a fear in the public that public schools are going to be forgotten about. And, well, I don't know so much about that, seeing that private schools get more than public schools from the government, which is absolutely ridiculous, and that's for another video. But there was only a couple of months ago, people were worried that universities are going to bump up their prices, and someone else came out, I can't quite remember, I can't quite recall, but someone came out and said to fix this would be to have competition in the unis. Basically a competitor towards the governmental unis, which is, well, what's your alternative? Well, the alternative would be privatisation of universities. I mean, before the budget even came out, this was like 2 or 3 months ago, there was fears that we would follow in suit with the US's policies when it comes to university and have privatisation of schools, which would, of course, deter people from going to university because they don't want to pay the huge friggin' uni loans and all this type of shit. So it is a bad idea, but this fear has come back again with the whole attacks on the whole concept of people going to university and their payments being cut back and all this. Are we, so I bring to you, are we, in any way, shape or form, is our government trying to become a clone of the United States of America? It's kind of starting to look that way. I'm talking about privatisation, and that's like one of the major things the US has done. I mean, there's talk of privatising privatising the Australian Post. There's talk, or then you've got the GP tax, which is another bad budget idea, if you ask me, as well as fear of privatisation of Medicare, or at least talks of privatisation of Medicare. And really, we have a good healthcare system. It's not up there with, say, Canada's or anyone else's, but it's okay. Do we really want to copy the US on a healthcare system? Trust me, we fucking don't. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Labour or Liberal. It seems that that's what we're doing right now. I get that we've got this relationship with the US on a governmental standpoint. But does that mean we have to copy them? I mean, I remember when Australia was its own country. It had its own policies. It had its own ideas. Now we seem to be just a clone of the US on trying to copy their policies, ideas, and copy them politically. And maybe even economically. It's just, it's silly. It's fucking, well, actually, it's fucking stupid. Because they're falling economically, the US. And it's a terrible fucking idea. But it begs the question, are we trying to copy the US with its policies and its economical structure and all that shit? It bloody well seems it. It doesn't matter if it's Liberal or Labour. I mean, it was Julia Gillard that brought in the whole concept of these income management scheme cards, which are basically a fucking food stamp. And now with Abbott, with the privatisation of this, that, and the other, it's getting ridiculous, and especially with the whole GP tax. I mean, it's very similar to basically you go to a doctor and you get billed, which is a basic US thing. So, again, are people who are becoming in office, doesn't matter, Liberal or Labour, whoever the fuck gets in, are they trying to become American clones? And do they see like that as the almighty best way of running a government or running a country? Because I'll tell you right now, it fucking isn't. When you've got bills in the US, especially in certain states, that are trying to cut major corporations from making too much money into a political party, and because it's a breeding ground for corruption. It's basically an anti-corruption bill going through the US in certain states. It ain't an idea you want to fucking follow. Alright? Trust me on that. So, look, this is just my opinion. I do honestly think that right now, be it Liberal or Labour, Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott, and by the way, Tony Abbott is basically Australia's version of George Bush. Sorry, he's a fucking moron in my eyes. But with that said, are we going towards a United States of Australia and copying the US when it comes to our policy making in that? I think we are. And I ain't liking it. And it ain't a good thing for Australia. What do you think about this? Do you think we are? Or am I just looking at things from a weird perspective and it's like, oh no, you're wrong? Who's to say? I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think we are. But enough of the rambling. When it's all said and done, our government's going to do what our government does. We can only do so much when it comes to protesting, the budget, and doing all that. So, with that in mind, what's your opinion on this whole concept? And real quick, there's something I forgot about. Tony Abbott is in talks, well, he was talking a couple months ago about bringing in a different system for measurements and stuff like that. So instead of doing, say, kilos, we'd be doing pounds. We'd be going back to the old style of measurement, which is basically, there's only like 2 or 3 countries that still do it. And guess what? One of them happens to be the United States of America. What a fucking surprise. So really, what are your thoughts on this? Does it really seem that way, that Australia or the Australian government is trying to copy the United States? Because, I mean, with the way we're structuring economically, the way the budget is, the talk of privatisation of multiple different areas, the whole card idea, yes, it was brought in by Labor, but it still was brought in, and it's optional, but still, it just seems like a food stamp kind of concept and idea. And also the changing of a measurement concept from what we've got to an old one that we used years ago. one that the United States happens to also use, and it's only like one of 4 countries that still uses it. Yeah. Like I said, I'd like to know your thoughts on this, but me personally, I do think that our Australian government, be it Liberal or Labor, is trying to copy the United States. And why? It's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, Kuiper's out.